everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast brought to you by marketingops.com and powered by all the Mo Pros out there. I'm your host, Michael Hartman. Joining me today is Len Ward. He's the managing partner and head of AI at Commexis. Len spent more than 2 decades building and leading an agency that evolved from traditional and digital marketing into analytics and AI. That experience has given him a front row seat to a fundamental change in how people find information, evaluate options, and make decisions. So Len believes marketing is moving from a search and retrieve model to a solve my problem model. We'll get more into that. And that the shift will challenge many of the assumptions behind websites, search content, lead generation, and the customer journey. So Len, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Appreciate it.
Glad to do it. I think it's an interesting perspective. So why don't we, before we get too far into it, one thing we like to do is get a little more background on people. So I gave the very surface level, before we talk about where you think marketing is going, especially as it relates to AI and these tools, you can tell us a little bit about the evolution of Commexis, and how that started as, or I guess, is that what it was when you started as the agency, but how did you evolve from a traditional agency into one that's more focused on analytics and AI? And what was it, that was maybe the catalyst for that, right? What did you see that was triggered you to go and make that change?
Sure. So we started, Commexis, actually, the original iteration was a company called Rank Me SEO. So better part about 20 years ago, we were doing search engine optimization when there really wasn't a lot of people doing SEO. I was actually a solo practitioner doing it. And this is when you were optimizing for more than Google. It was multiple search engines you were trying to go for at that point. As SEO grew, as more and more people kind of started pushing in towards the digital landscape, and it's funny because 20 years ago you were had to convince people to do digital, which was funny. Now they just, it's like a utility.
I remember those days, it was, yeah. Oh yeah.
Remember those days? Yeah, just amazing. So we started to morph. My agency started growing. I started hiring one person here, one person there, but it was rather quickly. I tell people all the time, we went from an SEO firm to an SEO agency, or an SEO consultancy to an agency very rapidly, where we almost had 25 people working for us. And we went through the mobile era. People may not remember, but there was a mobile era where people weren't necessarily happy about, putting their information on a phone. Like their payment information and so forth. Then we kind of moved into the social media era, which was a very, very big era. That was a very, we had a time during social media when people would not want to put anything on social media. And then there was even a video era, if you remember that. That's kind of where everything was starting to move into, video, sure, and so forth. So we kind of started migrating there. We had a couple acquisitions of smaller agencies, and we became a full service digital agency, from video to websites to hosting to SEO. Everything you could possibly think of is, we were pretty much offering. Then probably about 2017, 18, I forget the actual year, but we came across IBM Watson, and IBM Watson was because everybody heard about AI.
I thought it just played chess, right?
Haven't heard about it. Yeah. And AI it's been around since the 40s or 50s. A lot of people don't realize that. It's not a new invention. But you always heard in our world, and this, is automation was concerning. Well, it's going to automate us. We're going to lose jobs. And then you would hear how Google and Facebook were starting to do certain things where they could do the marketing for you. But our team started dipping in and looking at things with AI. There were some very early companies that claimed they were doing AI. It wasn't AI. But IBM Watson was the one we bought a subscription for. We gave it a shot. And I say this a lot, is we looked at it. It was good, kind of junk. But we said, okay, if they're going to do what they're saying they're doing, because you started reading a lot of stuff about it, and then you started hearing about ChatGPT, like OpenAI, you're like, okay, this is going to be kind of magical. But the funny part about AI is initially everybody thought it was just going to start writing stuff for everybody. That's kind of how AI was starting. What's going to take care of emails and do this and do that. So we started testing it. But the minute OpenAI released ChatGPT and we went in and we looked at it, there was a lot of errors with it. But what we did see was okay, this is going to fundamentally change copywriting, ad copy, even strategy, because we actually threw strategy in it right away to see what was happening. So it was right there where I looked around and I was like, you saw, it was the same thing I saw when you saw Google 25 years ago. And then when we saw this 25 years later, I'm like, this is way more powerful. I'm like, I want to push all my chips into the center of the table. So that's how Commexis arrived where we are. But I will say, I still think AI is where we were with the internet 25 years ago, where people were still not really knowing what this is. And the same conversations now about we're going to lose our jobs and this were the same things that happened 25 years ago. Trust me, it was the same conversations. So that's kind of how Commexis, got to, right now we are an AI consultancy and we start going in and we implement, AI services and AI products for people to kind of get them.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was thinking when you were describing sort of the evolution of digital from, search stuff to other digital, then you talked about video. And I remember like how many places I was where we were like, is video, is it social or is it just digital? Like it was like, and I think it was funny that like thinking about those kinds of conversations now, like they seem like it doesn't really matter. Right. And now of course, right. I guess Google's, well, I don't know if this is still true or not, but I think it is that Google or YouTube isn't still the second biggest search engine on the internet. Is that, yeah?
Yes, it is behind Google. I actually think that's going to overtake Google soon. I think YouTube's going to eventually overtake that. I think that's a matter of time. That's going to be Google's one of their major asset and last vestiges of the old world, because we're in the process of watching search.
Yeah. Well, so let's get into that a little bit. So when I introduced you, this is something you and I talked about before, is that you see a shift from, you called it search and retrieve to solve my problem. So maybe describe what you mean by that, and what's the significance of that, right?
So it's dramatic. For the last 25 years, everything we've done in marketing and business, every business model has been built on somebody searching for they have a problem, right? And then they go on the internet and then they search for a solution. So they're reading blogs, they're watching videos, they're gathering a bunch of assets. And then they are taking that back and they are trying to make, whether it's a business decision, whether they're doing a personal decision, and they're reading and condensing all that information. And then what they do is they go in and they fill out a form to have somebody contact them. Maybe they place a phone call, and then they go through a rabbit hole of doing more research.
Well, so before you go, like it just occurred to me, like that's actually not fundamentally that much different than what I did when I was in high school or college, where I'd go to the library, I'd have something, and I would, instead of it doing it online, I was doing it through the card catalog or the microfiche listings, etc. Right? It's fundamentally not that much different than that. It just shifted the form, the environment in which I was doing it.
Yeah, you actually just described the era pre the internet, which is 100% right. And it's funny because I think that a lot of the people that are panicking about AI right now, and I'll get into solve my problem, if you pay attention to the history of what's going on, this is just an evolution. Everybody's well, it's a revolution, or is it an evolution? Because they call the internet a revolution, and it was. But we have reached a point, I think, now where there's so much information coming at humans that we want to pose a problem to you and we want you to solve it. Like I don't want to read your blogs. I don't want to read your white papers. Maybe I'll watch some of your video clips. I'll do that. But they don't want to go through a 2-3 week process of trying to come up with a decision. Even if it's an instantaneous decision, like let's just say they were arrested and you're looking for a criminal attorney, or your tooth cracked and or something's broken in the house. We're at the stage now where people want to go to something and they want to have an answer given to them right away. So the minute ChatGPT was put in front of an individual, or Grok or Claude, which is Anthropic, or Gemini, which is Google, you went in and posed a question and it immediately came back with an answer. It didn't come back with websites. It didn't come back with, hey, read this. It's like, no, this is your answer. So that is where we are at right now from a business standpoint. And that changes everything fundamentally. It changes sales, it changes marketing, it changes everything, where now our entire process is, what problems do we solve, opposed to how do we work people in a funnel? It's a very, very different.
Yeah. I mean, I know just personally, I obviously use these LLMs for business related stuff, but on a personal standpoint, like I think of the different things that I've used it to do research on something where I want to figure out, we had a deep freezer that went bad last summer and I didn't want to pay to get a replacement. And I was hoping I gave it here's what the symptoms are, what do you think the options are, and how can I fix it myself if I'm not very handy. Right. And it walked me through what to do. I did the same thing we've got a
Mhm.
kitchen drain situation. Like there's all these things where I could have spent a lot of time doing my own research, and this just shortened that. I still, and this is maybe where you were talking about, like where people are viewing this as different, maybe than other changes in the past, is that I mean, in some ways, it does feel like it's. We were talking right before we started recording, like how I feel like the LLMs in particular feel like they're leapfrogging each other, or I think you
Mhm.
said that maybe you think they're narrowing in on spaces where they're going to be stronger than others. But I mean, I'm like, I still had to do my own sort of analysis of an assessment of did I trust what it was? Did I clarify, right? I'm still finding I have to do that. Yeah.
You mean clarifying what you're putting
Clarifying
in
what I'm
there?
putting in there, or just making sure I understand what it's given me, so I can go, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Right? It still requires my ability to evaluate it.
Yeah, it does. And I think that goes directly back to when you were searching on the internet
Yeah.
15 years ago. You'd have to go through, if there's 10 blue links, you went through 5 that were garbage because they were getting
Yep.
spammed up there. And then 2 that were like, okay, they're good. And 3 are like, wow, this
Right.
really gives me my answer. I still think we're there, but that took years. I think this is going to take a year before it really, you're going to pose a question and these LLMs are going
Yeah.
to know you. People forget, like a lot of times it's like you sit down on a search engine and people would type in, and a lot of times search engine didn't know who you were because you weren't logged in. Even when you were logged in, it didn't remember a lot of stuff. It's only recently that
Yeah.
it remembered a lot of your search history, meaning last 5, 6, 7 years. But the LLMs, if you have that on your phone, you have that on your computer, it's going to memory know what you are, and it's going to know your idiosyncrasies, and it's going to know the question you ask is going to put the pieces together. So it's truly getting to know you as a person. So you will, in the next 18 months, find the answers, find yourself less and less digging through it and trying to prompt it and reading through it to the point of you almost feel like you're like talking to a human being because it's like they're giving you the direct answer right away. So
Yeah.
that is
No, I
coming.
mean, again, talking about right before we started recording, like how have you started using, in my case, I was using ChatGPT, not that it matters that much, but I was using it, I'd use it to prepare for these recording sessions. And the first, couple of dozen, right, I was much more looking at, did it get it right? Did it match how I wanted to do in the past where I did it manually? And now it's gotten good enough because it knows me already. Like I've given it feedback where I did something I didn't like, and it's just continued to get better to the point where I really don't
Mhm.
have to do much in the way of reviewing it. I still do. I
Sure.
I don't put the same amount of effort into it as I did 6 months ago, 3 months ago. And I
Yeah.
think that's
And you made a good point because I think that's where we're beginning to fall off. Too many people are letting it solve the problem for them. Too many people are letting it do all the work. And the biggest question I'm asked is, well, AI is going to surpass everything. Is it? Because from what I understand, nothing's ever surpassed
yeah,
the human mind. And the human mind was what created this thing. So if the human mind is now starting to stay lockstep with what this thing is teaching it all the way through and really kind of following all the way through, that is the single fastest way AI will not jump a human being. It's now some people have problems learning and digesting information a little differently. But if you train these things to teach you how to digest information, how to teach you and say, here's how I want to present it to me, you're going to find yourself maybe not as smart as this, but it's not outrunning you. And I think that is the thing we have to drive home in like people are, well, it's going to get rid of school. No, school's going to move into, you have to try, teach children or teach, college kids, whatever, how to work with these things. And that's the biggest thing, the biggest threat I see from AI right now. And my concern is that people are just letting it do its job for you. And they're just write this for me, write this email. And I see these emails. I've actually read these blog posts. I've
yeah,
seen the stuff. I'm like, you literally forgot to say, it literally prompted you a question down below. You cut and paste and put it in your blog. Like,
right.
so, and we need to get much better at being gatekeepers of what goes out there because it's really bad right now. And you're going to get fired if you
Yeah.
keep doing this,
Well,
because your boss was
so
not
it's
paying you.
interesting. I have kids who are in high school, college age, and it's funny because my oldest in particular is like, nobody in our age range likes these things, right? We know that we have to do them,
Mm,
partially because it's like a job. They think it's making it harder to get jobs. I'm not totally convinced of that. I think there's a component of that for sure. But what they're saying, what he said is funny. Is like it's all the boomers and Gen X people that are all excited about it, and I'm like, yeah, but my perspective, I've kind of straddled those two generations a little bit. I'm kind of on the cusp. Is I feel like maybe this is what your take is too, right? Yes, does this feel like a change that's very significant? Yes. Is it moving faster than, say, the internet one or things like that? Yes. But it's, to me, like, I'm still not sure I'm convinced that it's as big of a change as some people are making out to be. And then when it comes to the job front, I think a lot of companies are using it as an excuse for poor management, poor performance that could be attributed to anything else. They're using that as a way to cut.
I agree. And I think the biggest people who are susceptible to losing their jobs are the large companies. The large companies are going to find themselves finding it to be nearly impossible to compete with the 1 and 2 person shops, up to 5-person shops, because they truly understand AI. The fundamental reason why why you're going to lose your job at a large company, or why large companies are going to start missing earnings and potentially close, and people are like, oh, that's never going to happen. Really? Go ask Eastman
Right.
Kodak what happened with cameras. So is because businesses are using AI to speed up processes. That's
Mm-hmm.
all they're doing. They're not using AI to solve problems and break bottlenecks to get the client's answer faster. That's an entire shift in how you operate a business. So to me, that's the biggest problem we're facing with it right now. We're just trying to speed everything up. So it's not that you're going to lose your job. I think you're going to start burning humans out. We
Yeah.
see it right now with the amount of AI work that we're doing right now and that we're trying to implement for clients. I'll never forget, Amy, who works with us, and Amy's, very, very, very bright. She used to run over analytics before AI. She's like, I feel like I'm doing 10 times the amount of work that I did for regular, standard marketing. And we all agree
Yeah.
it's the same thing because you're constantly building. It's a lot of work. But I do think, though, that that shift is coming. And I think the minute you dig down deep and you start seeing what it's doing, you almost can't unsee what you've seen. So when we kind of go up to the front lines and see it and come back, I'm like, I don't think people understand what's coming. They're like, I'm going to lose my job. No, your
Yeah.
company's going to close. Don't worry about losing your job. So my advice to people, and I don't mean this go counter against businesses, take every living moment you have right now when you're at home and start interacting with these things. And if you've ever had an idea or ever had a concept, start
Yeah.
working with it and kind of go with it and let it help you go all the way through. Protect yourself. Because even if you can't get hired, let's just say these companies start falling, you're going to find yourself with a business, or you're going to find yourself with a stream of revenue because AI helped you out. It's time to start doing that, opposed to worrying if you're going to lose your job.
It's funny when you said like it's hard to unsee. Like it takes me back to the guy I went camping and hunting with one time. He made the mistake of looking at the ingredients in the chorizo. Yeah, you don't want to know that.
There you go. Good
um,
analogy.
so okay, so you touched on this a little bit, but like this whole like search and retrieve model, right? People who are searching for
Mm-hmm.
products, technologies, whatever, right, would have to go do search, visit sites, analyze that, ask for somebody to call them, and so on. So are you? How much do you think that's going to shift over to being done on LLMs or other AI platforms and that infrastructure, as opposed to, I guess this is like the agent, like the buyer agent kind of model, like,
Mm-hmm.
and if you think that's going to shift, like what kind of impact will that have on companies when it comes to their website, the content they have? Does SEO even matter, right? And other kind of both, I guess, primarily on their own channels, if you will.
So I think within 5 years that the shift will be dramatic. I think in 5 years' time, you will look at Google like the yellow pages, like how we literally look. Like you would see somebody going through the yellow pages right now, you would find it really funny. I do think they're going to have a contingent of people that will still use search engines because that's how they process information. Again, let's not forget how humans process information. It's very different for a lot of people. They may like to read, they may like to digest things, and go from there. But I think that within 5 years' time, it's all going to change because you're going to have a much more educated individual showing up to you. Like you made a point where you know, checked YouTube and you looked at a couple things to fix one of the
Mm-hmm.
things you said in your house. I forget exactly what it was, but so you're going to show up at a plumber. You're going to show up at a lawyer. You're going to show up B2B manufacturer, and you're going to know just as much, if not more than any of the salespeople in there. You're going to know pricing. You're going to know specs. You're going to know inventory. You're going to know exactly, you know, when you can get the stuff in. You're going to sit down and talk with a lawyer. And while the lawyer is always going to be smarter than you in law, because it's what they do, they're not going to like be able to tell you something that you have not seen already, you know, on LLM. So businesses aren't preparing for this. They're not preparing for, in my, what I like to call is the last 10 yards to get to the end zone. You're not ready for that. And I think that's the thing they have to start preparing for. What do you do when an intelligent client comes in? Like, what is your sales process to be ready for, like, when the person comes in is like, I'm 90% of the way there. What can you do to get me there? Those are the type of things you have to start looking at. And you have to start, you know, it's not start, you know, sitting around and, well, what type of content do we market? What product do we do? Once AI understands your business and it's listening on your website, listening internally, which are called sensors or
Mm-hmm.
chatbots, if you want to call it, at that point, it's going to tell you what to do. So to me, that's where I think like the fundamental shift is coming. And I would maybe 10% of companies understand it. Even when you hear like CNBC talking or you read a Wall Street report, because, you know, my background is on Wall Street way back in the day, I still have, you know, my finger on the pulse. I listen, I'm like, these companies have no idea what they're talking about. They're not even, they're just making it up about AI. Like they're literally making it up. And they're just like, we're just speed the process up. We're going to do this and do that. Speeding the process up is going to make you fall. Changing the fundamental business model and how you respond to a client is going to make you succeed. That's why I do think the smaller shop is going to win out, because they're going to understand the solve my problem world. So the day of the behemoth company, which is America, you're going to see a bit of that change. We're coming into a dawn of where the smaller company is going to rise. What does that mean for Wall Street and stocks and all that? I don't really know. But what I do know is that the rise of, like I say, a 5-person shop who truly understands the solve my problem world, opposed to a company that is still pouring tens of millions of dollars into blogs, ridiculous ads, lead generation, all of that. I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing that now, but if you're not starting to migrate your money over to building an actual AI company, in 5 years' time, you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you're saying like you said an AI company. Do you mean like an AI enabled company, or do you truly mean like
AI first company, which means almost like a digital, like we have bring our company to the digital age. We've all heard companies say that, which is funny. Digital age back, you remember this 10 years ago, was having a website. Now you're in a digital age, but now it is installing AI, whether you want to call it LLMs, whether you want to call it platforms, whether you want to call it vibe coding, around certain places where there typically used to be bottlenecks, and you actually are breaking those bottlenecks with AI. That's what it means to become an AI first company. Not we have Claude and we have ChatGPT and we're just speeding up blog posts. That's just you work, like I said, working clients or customers.
Yeah, like I've heard some companies talk about, you know, employing AI as a to get the benefit of a time dividend, which I think is what you're saying. Like they're speeding up processes, but it doesn't necessarily make them better, especially when it comes to, are they going to be better at producing products that meet customers' needs and and solving customers' problems? I think is that kind of a way of saying what you were saying?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what it is, and I think maybe if I'm hearing you right, I think inherently, I think humans are never going to take their hands off the wheel. I do agree with that. I think everyone worries about AI taking over the world. I just don't see humans. Humans still want a human operating. Humans still want a pilot piloting a plane. You know, humans still want major decisions happening. But there's a lot of decisions and processes in business where you don't need a human on board. Middle management, like clogging up processes. Like we got to go through 5 different, approvals to get it done. I think that's where AI is going to start breaking those bottlenecks and things are going to get quicker. And that's how you get to an answer quicker. And I just think it's funny because I get frustrated talking to companies about search and retrieve to solve my problem. And it's funny because you get them buying in and they get it. And then 10 minutes later, they're back in the search and retrieve world. Well, what type of content? Wait, stop. You're still coming back to the same thing. Get off the horse and let's get into the car, because everything's changed. But I think, that's kind of what it is. So it's really, really understanding to get to a customer's answer as fast and ethically and
Right.
correctly as we can, what is stopping us from getting there?
Okay. So, okay, I'll shift gears a little bit here, but yeah, I want to go back to you. You had said when we talked that you have predicted, and I assume this is public, right? That you think Google could miss earnings in the near not too distant future. So, what makes you believe that, and what do you think what kind of impact do you think that will have on marketers who are still relying on search for lead gen?
I, when they miss earnings, I think for the very first time, I think business owners who have not embraced AI will, for the very first time, realize that Google's not as infallible as it used to be because it was for the better part of 20 years. I think they'll realize that. Um, and I think that that will really fundamentally rock a lot of what's going on. Because here's what you have to think about. Technically, last quarter, Google's telling you how it was a blowout quarter, but the reality of it was a blowout quarter because the stock they put out there for sale. So if you dig deep into their numbers, like the Wall Street, I forget the reporter did, it's their quarter was not
Mm,
that good. Um, they think more. They keep telling you how search is improving. No, it's not. And they keep telling you how more money's coming in the pay per click. No, you're charging more money. It doesn't mean more money's coming in. You're charging more. Most businesses right now are starting to allocate money away from Google, and they're starting to try to identify different types of things, influencer marketing, video clips,
yeah.
TikTok, things like that, because that is where a lot of the new buying public
Hmm.
is at. You have to remember with Google, I love Google. It's built my business. It's helped pay my
Sure.
mortgage. Like, it's been a great company. Um, but there's nothing they have that's defensible. And everybody says, well, they have the reach. Okay, well, you mean they have Gmail and they have, okay, great. So give me one product that Google's created that AI could not replicate right now. Right now, it literally could. And if it couldn't, it's within 18 months of being able to create an entire email infrastructure, an entire cloud infrastructure, an entire pay-per-click structure, even a potential video structure. So YouTube and all of that, and Google may have the dominant search engine and the dominant both search engines. But as people start building their own things, as they understand how to market the right way, because they're leaning on influencer marketing, yeah, Google is going to miss earnings. I don't think there's any question because everyone's like, well, they have a moat. No, they don't. I don't think there's one business in the world, unless you're Anthropic or ChatGPT, that has a moat. And it's hard for us to accept that. But I think that's where we
Mm,
are. If, and that's what, if you haven't, and that's what I keep coming back. You can't unsee what you've seen. The minute you interact with a vibe coding product to say, hey, replicate Google for me, you'd be surprised how quick it comes back. Now, is it right? No. But just to even be there is mind blowing to me. So anybody that's constantly pouring money into these companies thinking, oh, they're immune, I don't think you're paying attention. And I definitely think you have not really read up on how far along
yeah.
AI is.
And it's moving so rapidly. It's hard to keep up. So when you
Yeah.
talk to your marketers and clients, if they're still relying on traditional, like I don't even know what I want to call it traditional, but contemporary traditional lead generation models, right? What are you telling them, and like what areas of that model are breaking down faster than others, and what are you suggesting that they do now?
The first thing that's falling down the fastest, which breaks my heart because I am truly an SEO at heart. That's how I started this entire thing. I mean, I am an absolute
Mm-hmm.
fan of SEO. I actually enjoy doing SEO. I enjoy old
Yeah.
school SEO. It was always a good time because you always like
Back in
seeing
the
the
day,
results of what
I
you did.
wrote for within an internal company. I wrote like writing for search training.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had to. Yeah, and interlinking and just the right meta tags, the right backlinks, and I just loved it. I thought it was good, but SEO is clearly in the end of days. And SEO, everyone's like, well, it's going to live in the AI world. No, it's not. Like, come on, I'm a 25-year veteran of SEO. No, it's not. I look at it right now. I look at SEO. I'm like, all right, if you want to call some schema code and stuff like that, SEO, I get it, but not the traditional SEO blocking and tackling that we're used to. So I think the organic leads that you typically used to get, I think that's starting to dry up. Organic traffic is beginning to pull
Mm-hmm.
back. I even think like pay per clicks beginning to hurt a little bit because again, if we're moving to solve my problem, opposed to search and retrieve. Remember, 1 billion users a week. Just ChatGPT alone
Is
is a
it
billion
really that
users.
high
Just
now?
8 billion
I didn't
people on the
realize
planet.
it. Okay, wow.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, 8 billion people on the planet. So look how quick they're closing the gap on this.
That's crazy.
Um, That's
because
crazy,
that's
right?
I mean that's twelve and
So
a half percent of the world population, which includes like all people. So there's going to be a big cohort at the young and old ages that probably don't use it much, if at all, and
yeah,
then you've got just general people who don't have the infrastructure in their wherever they happen to live, right? So 12.5% is probably like in terms of like the population of people who are likely to use it. It's probably like think it's like 20% of the. That's crazy. Like,
yeah, that's what I mean. Like I don't. And then everybody's like, well, they're racing to build out data centers. We don't want data centers, but yet they're sitting on ChatGPT asking a question in their cars. They just got done at town hall complaining about a data center.
right.
Like where do you think this is coming from? So, um, got a
I hear
landscaper here.
that's
Sorry,
the
he's
this
in my
is like
office. Sorry
this
about
is
that.
real life here, right, folks? So I was surprised my
Yeah,
dog.
he's
There was somebody at
guys.
my front door. I thought my dog was going to start barking. So
This guy's finding a need to leaf blow our office windows. Here. I don't really know why. I need to know there's grass
all
up the side of
right,
the building.
we'll power through.
Um, yeah. So, but I think so. What I'm telling clients now from a marketing perspective is you have to start. This is where we wrote a blog post about 3 years ago. We're at the intersection of AI and influencer
Mm.
marketing. And influencer marketing means you need to start thinking of your company as a micro influencer in your industry. Because what's going to happen is people are going to have a problem solved on an LLM. And then what they're going to do, like have it all the way through. Then if they want to work with you, they're going to go on your Instagram and look at a reel, look at your story. They're going to go to LinkedIn and watch a video. They're going to go to YouTube Shorts and take a look at everything because that's how we're starting to digest it and that's how we're making decisions. And it's quick and it's fast. So I tell companies, if you have not thought about having somebody walk around with a camera and filming, just you filming, just you doing
Mm-hmm.
business. You don't need to do these big educational posts, just like a day in a life
So
type
it doesn't
thing.
have to be highly
Um,
curated and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, you'll find yourself, you know, really adapting to the new user. So that's what I'm trying to tell people. Like, stop having these hardcore conversations about SEO and all this other stuff, and really start moving your money into you being an influencer, at least your brand
Mm.
being an influencer, and AI. And that's kind of where the marketing world is moving towards. And that's where I can will eventually kind of start touching on the agent to agent
Do
marketing.
you think
But
that's
that's the
do you think
shift
that's
that's happening.
true for both B2B and B2C, or do you think is one ahead of
Yeah.
the other? I assume B2C is ahead on this kind of stuff versus B2B, but
On AI, B2B is ahead of B2C. When it comes to influencer marketing, B2C is vastly
okay.
ahead of B2B.
So that makes sense
So,
to me. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so you brought up agent to agent, right? Well, like that seems like I've. It's funny. I think about a year ago, everyone was posting on LinkedIn about here's my best practice on the way to to write a prompt for a chat LLM, and those have like completely disappeared, right?
they're
um
gone.
and I don't know if it's because people just got more comfortable or if it was just a bunch of bullshit or some combination of those or something else, but they're gone.
Bullshit. It
Yeah,
was 100%
yeah,
bullshit. But
yeah.
anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
The other, but I've now started seeing. I'm starting to see more and more of this. Like eventually, like there's going to be agents that are doing the buyer research and stuff. And if in some ways, I guess some, especially B2B companies, probably B2C too, they'll have what they call agents, right? Like like chatbots, right? That seems like I don't know if you call that
Yeah.
an agent or not, but like but they're going to have that. So is it? Do you really believe that? I don't actually. Well, I haven't experienced having an AI agent that's going to do my searching and stuff. Um, but what like are you seeing that actually happening? And then, or if not, like, do you think it's close? Do you think are we months away, years away?
No, it's
Okay.
here. So there are companies that are building agents, and some of the agents are pretty powerful. They're strong. But here's my caveat because there's a lot of people that are worried, well, we got to start building agents, do this, do that. Relax. Because what's happening right now, if you work within Claude or if you work within ChatGPT, they are actually helping you build the
Mm,
agents. I think we're months away from where you're going to tell it to build a specific agent and it's going to build the entire thing for you. So a lot of people are worried about MCPs and all this, verbiage I can throw
mm-hmm.
out at you. But we're moving to the world of the ultimate goal of ChatGPT and Anthropic, they used to say, is to make intelligence free. That was their thing, like meaning, and they were going to build it all for you. You were just going to pay to use it and
Right.
work within it and all that. So their goal is to make you creating your company's creating agents, like just basically understanding what the business process is and then working through it, and then they can release an agent. You're already hearing of the stories. You probably heard of a weekend where these agents are getting out of the pens and they're coordinating with each other, which is
Yeah.
concerning. And they're hacking in the companies. That is a very, very
Yeah.
concerning thing. So, right. So it's a matter of time before ChatGPT and Anthropic, which is Claude, and Gemini release this type of capability where you're creating your own stuff. So when you go to agent marketing, yes, we are at the dawn of where you're going to have your phone, you're going to have your own personal agent, whatever it may be, and I think it'll be within one of those LLMs, and it's going to know when you need to, tune up your car
Yeah.
before you know it. It's going to know when you need blood work
Yeah.
before you know it. It's going to know so much, and it's going to start setting appointments for you. It's going to start vetting maybe mechanics for you. You keep complaining about your home needing a new paint. It hears you talking, and what's going to happen is the minute you say, "Hey, I think I'll get a quote for paint," it's already got 5 quotes. It's pulling back saying, "I want you to work with one of these 5 companies because they have the right financing. They've worked on homes and they
Right.
know you." So here's what I tell people all the time in the marketing world: how the hell, in any way, shape, or form, do you try to market that? How do you build a buyer's journey when that agent's competing with the paint company's agent? I don't even know where
Yeah.
that's going to go.
And I
So
saw somebody post or on a LinkedIn post recently where somebody brought up something that I hadn't really even like in the back of my mind. I think it would have been obvious, but I hadn't really brought it to the forefront, which is with all this like vibe coding and stuff like that. Like if I was a hacker, I would be salivating, right? Because
oh
it's like
yeah,
all the things could be
oh,
exposed because you don't know how to build something that's got the right kind of security built into it. Like I used to, like just because I thought it was annoying, avoid two-factor authentication, and now I like if I don't like I will do it on everything if I can because it's just I'm worried
yeah.
about that kind of stuff. It's part of why I haven't really built a lot of like automation kinds of things, whether you call them agents or whatever, with some of these platforms because I don't really want them to have access to all my emails and all my calendar and like I just maybe I'm just not very trusting.
No, I think that you're coming back to what we said earlier about the humans aren't going to take their
Yeah,
hands off the wheel. I think that's what it is, and even security. I'm a big proponent of. I do think the man IT and cybersecurity is coming into their golden
yeah,
era. They really are. I mean, there's no doubt. But I think what's different is that they are going to be building agents whose sole job is to literally stop hackers from coming in. So it's a very, very
oh,
different.
interesting.
You're not going to need to, you're not going to need to know this like crazy in-depth understanding of IT and
Right.
cybersecurity. I think what you're just going to need to know the process of how they hack.
Uh,
And again, I'm not in that, but I would say my prediction is going to be that. I think the next battle line, and it's going to be a sustained battle line, is going to be agents. And it's going to be dramatic, meaning companies rolling out agents, IT, and it's just going to be, and there's a lot of them. And again, when you hear these stories about them hacking places and things like that, pay attention because it is a serious,
yeah.
serious concern. These agents are a
No, I think
problem.
that's one. And I mean the other piece of this that and I think you and I touched on this a little bit when we talked before, and I've really come to believe that like the humans not letting go, part of that is because we have to exercise judgment with
Mm-hmm.
these things, not only in terms of like what do we have it send it off to do, but also evaluate what the what it produced or came back with. My fear, and I think I've talked about this publicly too, is I mentioned already, right? I have kids who are in the high school, college years, and I think we've tried to do our best to give our kids a foundation to be able to question things and analyze things and exercise judgment and um, but in general I'm not sure that the last generation or two in the US in particular, right, have had an education that has built their ability to critically think. So that's my concern.
Your concern is warranted. Yeah.
So
I think that's where Gen X rolls in. So Gen X, whatever, boomers to a point, but I do believe Gen X is probably going to be the most important part of AI. And the reason I say it is this, and this is getting to the
yeah,
critical thinking, because for you to truly succeed and make AI work for your company, whatever it may be, or even if you're doing on a personal project, you have to truly understand the business processes that are taking place. You have to understand how business works. You have to understand how that business works. You have to understand all the components. And the people who typically understand that from A to Z are the ones that have been working in the industry 25 to 30 years. That's the ones that truly understand it. The mistake you're going to make is try to hand over your AI project, to maybe, like you just said, one of the generations who have not been taught how to critically think the right way, and you're going to let them come in and build it out. This is not 1998 or 2001 where your nephew can build a website and you're going to hire them to build a website. That's not how this works. This is way more powerful. You have to put somebody in charge who understands the processes, because then they know how to talk to the AI. Then they understand what's getting built. Okay, that does solve the process. And then they can turn around to the juniors behind them and say, this is how I got there. And really emphasize what you just said, critical thinking. And what I like to say, I don't care what anybody tells me. They are never going to be able to rationalize these things. That is a human element. And to my thing, it's when you teach them that, then what's going to happen is the generation behind us is going to be like, hey, if I'm not critically thinking, if I'm not looking at this rationally, this isn't the right product. So that's why I think I'm not trying to be age biased. I know I'm a Gen X guy, but if somebody walks in and is like, we're going to let this 22-year-old kid run AI, you're making a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm sure there are outliers there where there are people who, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And goes the other way too, right? There are going to be people who are Gen X age that I wouldn't want running it either. Right.
Oh no, yeah, I agree. I just mean, it's almost like I think I probably should reframe that. What AI can't overcome is experience.
Yeah.
So identify the individual who's got the most experience, and that 25-year-old may have the most experience. That 55-year-old may have the most experience, but that who should be leading your AI initiative right now, not somebody because you think they're technically inclined. If you don't understand business, AIs are relevant.
This is something I come back to all the time when part of critical thinking is evaluating trade-offs, right? Because there's virtually unlimited directions you could go with something like this, and the question is like, where do you start? How do you make the decision of, I could do this, but that means I miss out on this other thing, and there's not a right answer. And I think that's what, to me, like, this is maybe adjacent to the critical thinking piece, which is, one of the other sort of downsides of current education is this, you're told something, you regurgitate it, right? That's standardized testing and things like that. Standardized testing has been around, so I don't want to totally discount that. But a lot of times, variant I've heard, like, so, and this is I don't want to get into a political thing, but there's a well-known political commentator who has said in the past, right, facts don't care about your feelings. And it really bothers me, because I don't think that there are always facts that you can agree to, right? Because it's fundamentally some perception, and you could have a belief that is based on you what you assume and things like that, but ultimately, we are all making judgments whether we know it or not, and I don't know if we're doing it consciously. And I think that that bit there of evaluating the trade-offs between different paths you could take, or decisions you could make, or projects you could do, or where you invest your money, all those things, that requires a fundamentally different kind of skill than I think a lot of this, or younger generations have been taught. It's not their fault either.
Well, I agree. It's not their fault. And I think what's happened is that you're looking at, settlers now in the digital era, where you and I are more pioneers, and we're pre-pioneers. We remember the days when, the chuck wagon. I mean, so we're way back. So we were the one last generation that saw pre-computers. There was a time when nobody had a computer in the house. Nobody had a computer anywhere. So, and then when we got the computer, which wasn't even really a computer, it was a Texas Instrument thing. You put a cartridge in it, did math for you. Then we saw all that. That's why I just think Gen X and the boomers are and I know that everybody wants to crush us, but we're a very rare breed where we saw more technological revolution advancements than anybody in the human race. That's why I think there's nobody better equipped to take a look at what's going on right now to say, hey, we remember all the way back then. And when the failures happened all through these advancements, there's always a common theme. And it's like you said, we didn't educate the right way. We didn't teach them the right way. So I'm with you. My fear right now is that they're so dependent on technology that what if there, I don't really want to get off topic here, but what if there is a cyber attack? What if there is something like I could live without my phone for a week or two? I'd be okay. I don't know if these kids would be okay. My kids would panic.
Yeah, my son worked for a car dealership over the summer, and somebody brought in a standard transmission vehicle, and he was able to he got in. And they said, "Go ahead and try it," and he moved it a few feet, but it freaked him out. Right, he wouldn't know what to do with the standard transmission. Yeah. Same thing with technology, right?
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. But I think it's a whole. How these, I guess what I'll say is this, and maybe you agree or not. I don't think the way the human mind is advanced, because I will say these kids are much smarter than us. Now, I'm the first to say these 25-year-olds are so sharp when it comes to stuff like I can't compete with these guys. But what I will say is that I think our education process has not advanced the way the human mind has. And I think we have to try to start thinking, how does AI incorporate in that? How is that going to have an impact on the job? And I think you're making a really, really critical point, Michael, where I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to. The war to win AI, if you want to call it that, is going to start in the classrooms and how we educate these children all the way, giving them the fundamentals of business, of life, of so forth, to say, no matter what happens in AI, as long as you stick these fundamentals, you're going to be okay, because nothing's changing the fundamentals of running a business. But I think the digital world, the problem is that we're so used to things happening so quick right now that I just don't think education is doing that at all right now. But I have 3 kids, and
I mean, I think like just in general, like human evolution has not kept up with the pace of technology change for the last probably 80 years.
I agree.
Yeah. So, well, why don't we wrap up here? Because our core audience is marketing ops and revenue operations people. Like, what should they be doing, especially if they're in a leadership role, if they're not already to kind of, I'm sure they're all under pressure to quote do AI, right? Whatever that means, right? What should they be doing to make sure that they're not just chasing every little thing or reacting, say, over the next 12, 18 months?
So I think you want to go, and my opinion is, go all the way to the end and say, well, I know this sounds like Anthony Robbins, but what is the outcome of the marketing campaign you're trying to get to? And, what's trying to happen? And basically say, what are the bottlenecks that are stopping this client's goal or your goal, whatever it may be, from getting there? And then what can AI do to break the bottlenecks? How can you solve that customer's problem faster? That doesn't mean more blogs. It doesn't mean more ads. It doesn't mean anything like that. What you want to do is basically say, how can I put AI in to get answers quicker? So
could I augment that to say better answers quicker?
Yep. Better answers quicker. Yeah. Because you don't want any answers. I think that's actually a very good point. And I think that's the thing you have to look at. Stop looking at AI as something to speed up a process, and start looking at AI as the true revolutionary way to answer a problem when done the right way. And the last thing I'll tell you about marketers, if you are not telling your clients to start really embracing this, again, influencer type marketing world, it is time to start, because it is truly becoming a decisive factor in somebody wanting to work with you or not. We're seeing it. A lot of people are seeing it. Just a quick note, we even had one of our clients where we put a few videos up and thousands of views were happening right away. You'd be surprised the appetite for people with your clients being an influencer marketer. And it doesn't mean you have to be out there like one Jake Paul or something like that. It just means your brand is the influencer, not the human.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to let the Jake Paul thing go. So I'm like, okay, that's, anyway, at least you can get on Netflix then, right? And make a ton of money.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Len, such a fun conversation. I appreciate it. If folks want to continue that with you or keep up with what you're doing or talking about, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can just go to Commexis.com. You can fill out a form. I'm always one that answers the forms. We don't mean to come across as jerks. We work with very select companies, but I am always happy to answer a question. I do get people to inbox me on LinkedIn. You can, request me on LinkedIn. You can always kind of go in and say, hey, I have a quick question on AI. I have no problem answering questions. I actually really like having a conversation about AI. So if you have one, just reach out to me. I'll see if I can help you.
Well, appreciate again, Len. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. As always, thanks for everyone who's been out there supporting us. And if you have any questions or follow up, or you want to have ideas for different topics or anything like that, you can reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me, and we'd be happy to chat with you. Till next time. Bye, everybody.